Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida Extension Service here in Hernando County, and joining me today is one of our Master Gardener volunteers, Bernie. Good morning, Bernie. How are you?
I'm fine, Dr. Lester, and I hope you are too.
Yes, I am. I have not been around a whole lot recently, but I am back, and I'm here today. And our other regular co-host, Colby, who's our Florida-friendly landscape coordinator, is feeling a little under the weather, so he won't be able to join us today. But that's okay, because this is for you guys out there watching us. And if you have any lawn and garden type questions, please just go ahead and put them in your chat box under the comments, and we will see them and we will do our very best to answer them. I see that we have at least one person on here with us today. So that's a great start.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. That's true.
Exactly. A full house starts with one person tuning in. But yeah, while you guys are all thinking about your lawn and garden questions and what you want to discuss, you can kind of see our background here behind our, two blocks, our two images. And when I was getting set up this morning, I was looking through backgrounds and I thought, we'll put this one up again. This one's kind of an oldie but a goodie. This picture was sent to us months ago, this past winter, from a Hernando County resident who was complaining about watering restrictions. He felt that he needed to water that day, even though it wasn't his day to water, because he had just fertilized his lawn that day. And his lawn needed fertilizer. He put it down. He needed to water it, and his lawn would look great. And here, let me turn myself off here for a moment. And I turned off Bernie also so that you could all get a good look at
That's
what it
all right.
looked like. um, his lawn may have needed fertilizer. I really don't know without looking at a soil test. But fertilizer and a watering is not going to reverse or fix a problem like this. It looks like, and because I looked at this picture when we first got the email months ago very closely, there's a couple of little tiny bits of St. Augustine turf grass left over. Obviously, they've been shaving this lawn down to the nub, cutting it just as short as they could. Weeds had moved in and were dominating, but the weeds were cut really short also. So what they have is, I can't even guess what percentage, 80, 90% bare dirt, and fertilizing that ain't going to fix it. At this point, unfortunately, the gentleman, if he wanted a beautiful lawn, would have to resod. And you can see in this picture in the background, if you look above both of our blocks, the neighbor across the street has a beautiful green lawn. This gentleman complained, well, my neighbor waters every day. And that's not allowed here in Hernando County. We are under once a week irrigation. So if you water and it's not your day to water, you may get a citation from code enforcement department if they see you doing that. So we don't want people watering every day for a beautiful lawn, and we don't want them shaving their lawns down to the nub for a dead lawn. All this just kind of trails around and circles back to proper turf grass management. If you manage your lawn correctly, you can have a pretty good looking lawn and not waste huge amounts of water or fertilizer or time or money or effort or sweat this time of year. Over fertilizing your lawn makes it grow like crazy. And Bernie, you say your lawn probably needs to be cut about every 3 days or so.
Yeah, it's growing an actual inch and a half a day. I mowed
Wow.
it four days ago, measured it, and it's grown 6 inches. So that's an inch and a half a day, and that's really going to put me in a bad position with my neighbors because they're not going to like my ugly lawn staying around as the way it does. Had a customer in this morning, and he had some fungal problems with the lawn. I'm pretty sure it was brown patch, but we got to talking, and his neighbor's lawns are beautiful, and his lawn he's been fighting. He was in 6 months ago when we went over the whole care of the thing, and he's got it, and the what's growing looks beautiful, but for the brown patch is taking out stuff, it needs some work, so he's going to take care of that. But he was explaining that when they dug the swimming pool hole, they used the dirt for fill in his front yard. And he said, I just had him come out and put in some landscaping. And he said, you can only dig about 6 inches and then it becomes like concrete. He said, in order to plant the bushes, they had to use a pickaxe to break it up. And I
Oh
said,
my,
well,
that's not good.
now we understand why you have a fungal problem and your neighbors don't. If you only have 6 inches of permeable soil, every time it rains, that soil is saturated completely, and it's not going to drain out. It's going to stay saturated, and you'll have a lot of fungal problems. So he's also going to do soil tests, and we'll find out what the pH is at the surface. I told him only go down about 6 inches. Let's find out what the grass is actually living in, and hopefully we can get it cleared up. He's not in a position where he's going to lose the lawn yet, but it's just not pretty. It's annoying to
Yeah.
a lot of people are that way. The lawn industry worked very hard to sell the idea that you should have a perfect monoculture, gorgeous, beautiful lawn, and if you couldn't do that, you weren't much of a man. So.
Yeah, but
Amazing what advertising has done to this country.
yeah, people sometimes don't realize that if you're talking about newer subdivisions, or newer home construction, there's a lot that goes into it. If they do bring in fill dirt and put that around the house and then put the new sod on top of it, that fill dirt could have come from anywhere. It may have, very, very unusual properties, may have a sky high pH. There's a lot of things that go into it. So it really is not as simple as you just throw down dirt and then throw down your lawn on top of it, add water and fertilizer, and everything is going to be great. There's a lot that you have to look at when you're trying to diagnose what their specific problem is.
The amazing thing about all this is that people think that you can just go out and get this rich black dirt and put down. If I put down 6 inches of black dirt, the good stuff, it's going to take care of my lawn problems. Well, it will for a year or so, but with the sun and the high temperatures that we have in Florida, that organic material that makes it all black and pretty is only going to last at best 2 years in topsoil. So, before you spend a ton of money on topsoil, just remember once the organic material is gone, you're stuck with plants that still have to grow in whatever is there. So don't expect that to be the cure-all. That's only a Band-Aid.
Well, University of Florida is doing a lot of research on applying compost with new home construction before you put down the lawn. And I had a meeting with a few people. This was like 6 months to a year ago. They're looking at if you place the compost and work it in, install the lawn, and then top dress once or twice a year, how much less do you have to water to have a healthy lawn, and how much less do you have to fertilize to have a healthy lawn? And they're looking at specific percentages and numbers that you can save on a compost-based lawn as opposed to just a fill dirt-based lawn. And I can't remember which one of those. They've come to the conclusion that you could save quite a bit. It's either fertilizer or water, but you can obviously save some on both. But it's a long-term thing. You're going to have to top dress with compost once or twice a year. But if you think about it, if you have a service coming out fertilizing, and there are neighborhoods where they put out a bid for a contract, and in their request for proposals, it says we want our neighborhood fertilized 5 times a year or 6 times a year. It's a lot of fertilizer. You don't need that much fertilizer. So instead of fertilizing 5 or 6 times a year, you apply compost once or twice a year, and your lawn is healthier, fewer disease problems. As long as you manage it correctly, you got to cut it the right height. You got to water it, but not overwater it. So if you're doing everything correctly, you can have a good looking St. Augustine lawn. Only problem is, like in the picture right below here, if you manage things the way some people do, I don't want to single out this one homeowner, but if you manage your lawn the way they do, it's not going to work out very well. We have a question here from Bassem about what is the best fertilizer for vanilla orchids, when and how often? I'm not positive, but I know that there is orchid fertilizer, and vanilla orchids, it is a tropical orchid. So if you use just regular orchid fertilizer, that would work well. They're not extremely heavy feeders, so you do not need to fertilize them very heavily. I would say very lightly, 2-3 times a year, and mostly watch its growth. So if it's growing just fine, you don't need to keep dumping on the fertilizer.
Yeah, orchids, just by their very nature, tend to grow in some of the poorest conditions. So,
Uh-huh. Well, I know vanilla orchids are terrestrial, so they can grow in the soil, and they're also epiphytic, so they can grow in either situation. Epiphytic orchids, they're used to, the roots are just on the trunk or branch of a tree. They're not getting a whole lot of fertilizer out in nature. They're used to that. So they only need to be fertilized very weakly. And our regular helper here, Teresa, who I could not make it through the day without, says experienced orchid growers fertilize their orchids weekly. So they need to be fed regularly. So using a balanced 20-20-20 orchid fertilizer is going to contain everything it needs, but mix a very, very weak concentration of it. You don't want to burn the roots or burn the plants. With any plant, if you over fertilize it, it's going to grow very, very quickly, going to become very, very green and lush, and becomes very attractive to insect pests. So kind of slow and steady is the way to go when growing most plants as a general rule. So Bassem, you're very welcome. If anybody else has any questions, just go ahead and put them in the comments.
the compost thing works really good for a vegetable garden also. Compost is actually nature's absolute best plant growth material. It has the organic material, it has the nutrients, and it provides the perfect home for all the little microbes that are necessary to convert the soil into something the plants can use. So uh, it's a win-win-win situation. And unfortunately, it's not one that very many people actually use. Hopefully, our solid waste people will get their act together and get this compost trial that they're doing on a commercial scale, and compost will be available to the people here in Hernando County. But anybody that can obtain compost, that is what you want to use more than anything else. That's better than just using fertilizer. It's better than just about anything else you can put down.
Well, Bernie, that's an absolute perfect segue into this, because Hernando, for all of our Hernando County residents who may be watching this either live or recorded, Solid Waste Department is working on a program where they take all the yard waste that's always been taken to the landfill, they grind it up, they mix in beneficial bacteria, they lay it out in a really, really long windrow pile, turn it a few times, turn it into compost, and it will eventually be available to county residents. probably by the bag, by the pickup truckload, by the dump truckload, but it's not available yet. Right now, they're still doing their first piles and kind of getting their process down. But I was up there, what was it, yesterday morning, I think, and picked up a sample of Hernando County compost, and we'll get a nice, we'll try to, there we go, nice black crumbly material. Looks really, really good. Still a little bit of twiggy stuff in it, but not much. I don't see any big chunks or branches or anything. Seems to have composted well, but I have to send a sample of this off to the University of Florida to get it tested for pH. For compost, they'll actually test the nitrogen level and phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and I'm not sure what else they test for, but I need to let that dry a little bit, send off a sample on Monday. So we're getting there. Kind of a slow process, but hopefully soon they will have large amounts of compost available. And for anybody who has a lawn, like the gentleman with the yard picture right below here, they could go and get compost and just spread it lightly on their lawn as a top dressing. If you keep doing that a couple times a year, over time, you're going to build up a nice, healthy soil, and your grass is going to grow better as long as you do everything else correctly also. When I first got that email, I did zoom in on the picture and looked really close. This guy's cutting his lawn, I mean, like just as low as that lawnmower possibly can. And any kind of turf grass, if you cut it that low, with the exception of Bermuda. Bermuda at golf courses, you can cut half inch, something really short like that.
They can actually go as low as 3/8 of an inch, but it requires daily mowing and daily care. If you do that, has to be done with a real mower, and their top dressing. It's a nightmare if you want to do that. But can you imagine somebody trying to do that on a lawn?
No, guys, you probably don't want it. That's a little bit too much effort. So for the types of turf grass that normal people would have in their lawns, St. Augustine, Bahia, maybe Zoysia, they all have certain heights that they need to be cut at. You need to cut them at that height. If you cut them really, really short, your grass may and probably will, in a lot of cases, die. No matter how much water and fertilizer you put on it, you have to manage your lawn correctly. Bill here says that he's had good success with spreading compost in areas of his lawn that were damaged in the drought last year. Yeah, I noticed that this spring and last spring were really, really dry for a while, and both really damaged. I have large patches of frog fruit in my lawn, and both springs it got really, really knocked back. Like a lot of it just flat out died. During the summer, it starts to come back a little bit, but I used to have a lot more than I have right now. So spring droughts can damage your lawn a little bit. Applying compost really helps. Really helps the grass to start to grow and spread and fill in those little bare spots. If you have a really, really big bare spot, you're going to need some sod to fix that one. But compost, very, very good for lawns and vegetable gardens.
The St. Augustine will run about 18 inches in a season if it's given good care. So basically, a 3-foot hole could fill in a season. And he was doing exactly the right thing. They're using compost in the bare spots. Once you solve the problem that caused the bare spots, that is absolutely the best way to get the lawn to run in.
Start cutting that grass high, use some compost. Be vigilant about figuring out if you have any other problems, whether that be a disease like take all root rot or some other kind of issue, parking your boat trailer on your lawn, whatever it might be. Fix all those and give your grass a chance to grow back. I do have people who send me pictures and they say, what can I do to make my grass spread and fill in these spots? And I look at the picture and they have like 10% grass, 90% bare dirt, or weeds, or something else, your grass is only going to spread so much. If you have 90% grass, 10% thin or dead spots, it can fill back in. But if it's the opposite, you may be looking at resodding, reseeding if it's Bahia. That's not easy, but you can do it, or taking some other kind of action to end up with a successful, good looking lawn.
Had a customer that had yellow stripes in his lawn, and they were nice long stripes and spaced about uh, 30 inches apart. And
Mm-hmm.
his lawnmower leaked gasoline.
Oh my.
That was kind of an unusual situation. So
You don't see that too often. Sometimes people will fertilize their lawn and they don't get good coverage. So now they have really dark green stripes that go in the same direction. Um, People will end up with a yellow spot in the corner. A lot of times that's a broken sprinkler head or a misdirected sprinkler head. Every once in a while, it's either their dog or a neighbor's dog who likes to pee in the exact same spot morning after morning. That can make a little spot yellow. So there's a lot of weird things that can happen to your lawn out there.
people really need to check the sprinkler system. Use some cat food cans or something with straight sides, and put 5 or 6 in a zone, and just find out how uniform it is. You need a half inch to give you a full application of water. If you have more than 3/4 of an inch, you're wasting water. So
Mm-hmm.
run it, put the little cans out, let it run a cycle, and if you have uh, you know an inch in one area and 1/4 of an inch in another area, you're not going to have a uniform lawn, and you it's amazing how often that happens. They're supposed to be set up so that they're spraying head to head and filling in, and a lot of times one of them is not spraying all the direction like it should. So you have these strange places in the lawn that aren't getting water. And if you don't do the test once in a while, you never know for sure what's causing it. So if you have brilliant green some places and it's very light green in others, a test of the sprinkler system is probably the first place to start.
And for anybody who has a service that cuts your lawn, you need to check those sprinkler heads really monthly, because a lot of services use, very large, very heavy lawnmowers, and they're zipping around your yard. And when those lawnmower tires hit your sprinkler heads are just made out of PVC plastic, and they're small, they're fairly thin. The pipes underground below them is just PVC. If it gets twisted or hit or bumped, it's going to break. It's going to get knocked out of where it's supposed to be spraying the water. The last house I lived in, we had a sprinkler system that I very, very rarely used. I had a real nice gentleman who cut the lawn, but he was on a great big lawnmower. Every time I checked the sprinklers, they were all messed up. They would break sprinkler heads. They broke a pipe, and having to fix a pipe like down. It was a spray head. It went down, and then it was on a 90-degree elbow. Right behind that is where he cracked the pipe. That wasn't much. I had to dig a fairly decent hole and stick my head down there to fix that one. But you're going to have to check the sprinklers even more often if you have a lawn service.
Well,
So
where are
I
all of our
have
questions?
some people tuned in watching us. If you guys have any questions, please just go ahead and put them in the comments.
This kind of a unique time in Florida. This is one of those times where you're not really busy planting things, and you don't have to tend to a lot, uh, but you do have to take care of your lawn. The rainy season starts, grass goes berserk, and the funny thing about grass is that it's an exotic. It is not a native plant. It is something we're forcing to grow here. So uh, I hate to admit it, but a lot of times it's smarter than we are. You know, I don't want to be here. You're not going to make me happy. So uh, if you've got Bahia uh, and you can't let it go to seed, then don't forget to overseed once in a while to keep the number of plant counts up. And if you do get to overseed once in a while, if you're in an area where you can let the seed heads sit for about 2 weeks before you mow, uh, that'll take care of it. Just do that twice a year, and it'll keep your seed head count up and keep it looking good.
Yeah, I need to pick up a bag of Bahia seed. I have some spots that need to be a little bit thicker grass wise.
You know that seed has a relatively short life, so
Yeah.
all the seed will be dated. Don't buy any seed that's more than 6 months old. Uh, the germination rate, if you get 15%, that's really good. You know, obviously it's supposed to all be viable, but it's not going to produce uh, a real high percentage of plants. And if it's older, it's just not going to work. So you got your best shot if you're using younger seed. Um, and you know, if you use the old seed, you're probably getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 or 3% germination. That's really pretty sad. So
Yeah, and you're going to have to do it more than once. And if you have a Bahia lawn after it's a couple years old, if you just go out there and throw some more seeds out a couple times every summer when we're getting really regular rain, every little bit that comes up is going to help to keep your lawn thicker, because Bahia lawns over time tend to get a little bit thinner. And when they get thin, you get even more weeds moving in. Then everybody's tempted to put down more weed control. And then you just end up in a bad place, basically.
yeah, Bahias, each one of the little plants you see is an individual plant,
Hmm.
whereas the zoysia and St. Augustine and Bermudas, that they tend to have runners. So uh, you see a plant and it's going to produce a side shoot plant and keep filling in. Whereas Bahia, if you lose one, you've got a hole in the lawn,
Yeah.
and it's just natural that over a period of time you lose a few, and as you lose them, these holes are replaced by weeds, and as the weeds grow, they crowd out the Bahia. So weed control and replacing overseeding uh, very very important in Bahia. If you want to keep it a beautiful looking lawn, and it's a great lawn, that's the only real maintenance that it needs. It is the kind of lawn that takes care of itself. So works great for the county. They go out and put grass down along the side of the road. Um, it puts up some seed heads. They don't come back for a month and mow again. When they come back and mow, the seed heads have already reseeded, and it just
Mhm.
keeps itself reseeded. It helps keeps the weeds down, makes everything happy, and it's a good thing for everybody. But in a home situation, you've got to do what uh, needs to be done, and that is you need to overseed or you need to let it go to seed and keep it mowed. Mow it 3.5 inches, the absolute minimum for Bahia.
Yeah.
4 inches is a little better. So
Higher is better. The higher you're able to cut it, the healthier your grass is going to be, the more it's going to shade out those low growing weeds, the more it's going to shade the surface of the soil so it doesn't dry out as quickly. Cutting it high just results in a lot of really, really good benefits for your lawn. And there's really no downside. I mean, if you want to use your front yard as a putting green, you know, you may want to cut it a 1/4 inch high. But for the health of your turf grass, cutting it higher is always better. We've got a question about garlic here. So Bassem asks, what is the best time to grow garlic? Here in Florida, you grow that during the winter. So you can order your garlic or go to the store and buy it, and break it up into the little cloves and plant it in the fall. I would say September. You could wait till October to let it get a tiny bit cooler. Um, Here in Florida, I believe it's just soft neck garlic that you want to grow. Hard neck garlic is what they grow out in California and other areas. But here you can grow soft neck varieties of garlic and elephant garlic. And I've never grown it before, and I need to remember to get some and try growing it this year.
Artichoke or Creole are real good soft neck varieties for Florida. So if you're looking for some cloves to plant, try artichoke or Creole.
Okay. And like I said, I've never tried growing it before. I know that people grow it and can do really well with it. Um, you could take the green part, garlic scapes, and eat them, use them to flavor your food. So I need to remember to try that this year. So, talking about vegetable gardens, now is a really good time to start planning for this coming fall and winter. It does not feel like it. It feels very hot. Oh, my computer says it's only 85 outside. It's probably lying. It's probably actually hotter than that. But now's the time to get those weeds under control. Start thinking about what you want to plant this fall. Uh, get a hold of the seeds if you need to order them. Clean out those pots. Get everything ready, and come up with a plan for what you want to grow in the fall, in the winter. I have started eggplant, tomatoes, and hot peppers, because right now, if you're starting them from seed, right now is a good time to start your seeds so that you're going to have transplants to put in the fall. I need to go out there and finish clearing out my garden weed wise. I do have a section where I'm growing sweet potatoes again. I have some sweet potato cuttings that I've rooted. They need to go in the ground. So now there's still plenty of things to do out there. And for anybody who likes to grow different tropical vegetables, now is when they're going to do the best. Sweet potatoes, okra, black eyed peas, a lot of South and Central American things, all the different roots, the cassava, yucca, boniato, those kind of things. If you're experimenting with them, now is when they grow in the heat of summer here. They like the heat, but start thinking about a plan and getting things ready for this fall. Right now, I really don't have anything actually in the garden except mostly weeds that need to be dealt with. And they are growing very, very fast with all this rain. But I need to get them out of there so that I'm all set come really September 1st. I don't like putting things in much before September 1st because I think it's still just a little bit too hot. I may have some like eggplant and hot pepper transplants that are going to go into containers a little bit before that. So this fall, I'm going to shoot videos on all that as I do it. So follow us on Facebook, and I will be posting them on there. Um, bum, 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 bum. There we go. If you're not watching us on Facebook right now, be sure to follow us on Facebook. And we're going to be putting a lot more videos about what to do in your yard this late summer, fall, going into winter. If you want to get a hold of Bernie, you can give him a call as soon as we're done here. We're going to be wrapping it up in just a little bit. There's our office phone number. You can call and actually chat with famous Bernie and ask him your questions, or stop by our office and bring him leaves and bugs and plants. And he's had pretty much everything brought in for him. What's the most unusual sample that somebody's brought in for you?
Probably Brahminy blind snake.
Oh, geez.
Uh, they found it in a potted plant and thought it was a worm. So
Yeah. They do look like worms, and they are very, very small. Were you here the day the gentleman came in and said he thought he had a problem with bed bugs. And we told him, well, if you bring in a sample, if you could actually catch one and find it, we'll look at it and we could tell you if it's a bed bug or if it's something else. Guy left, came back 20 minutes later with the whole container full of them. He must have brought in like a dozen. And they were bed bugs. It's like, oh, buddy, we have some bad news for you. You have bed bugs.
Yeah, I have had a lot of bugs under the microscope, and it's amazing what people do bring in. Uh, Probably the biggest thing that people bring in are ants wanting to know if they're termites.
Yeah.
Occasionally, we get some termites. The termites are very difficult to break them down to the exact species. So it's pretty quick to tell whether they're subterranean or dry wood. But then if you want to go beyond that, uh, I've got 20 pages that it's copied out of a book that it gives you the key, and you go down and you
Yep.
start looking at the little veins and the lines between the veins on the wings, and it gets to be a nuisance. So if you really want to know exactly what species it is, uh, give me some time. Don't plan on waiting while I do it. Uh, if all you want to know is this a termite and whether it's dry wood or subterranean, we're really quick on those. That we can do. And the other
Yeah.
one that I don't really like is ticks. We get a fairly decent number of ticks. And they're almost always Lone Star ticks. That's primarily what we.
They're easy to ID.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the other ones are a lot more difficult. I saw a website or identification guide before that showed all the different common ticks in the US and all the different life stages. Because, as they get bigger, their color changes, the spots and markings on them change. It had all of them for it. I have no idea where it is. I couldn't find it now if I tried to, but it's out there. And yeah, if you have a termite that you want ID down to species, you need to bring in one that has wings or a soldier termite. Worker termites all look the same. We can't identify them down to species. Um, do you ever have the pest control companies bring in termites and they want it ID'd, and the termite's got to be like 3 years old, and like the
And the
only
wings are
eggs are
smashed.
round.
Yeah.
It's like, buddy, how am I supposed to work with this? At least give me something to work with. There needs to be at least one good looking wing in the entire bag.
Yeah.
And you can tell them, like, these are so old that it's a termite. Either they have termites now or they definitely don't. These dead ones are so old that I'm not sure why it's important to know what they are.
We get about this time of year, we get a reasonable number of people showing up with mealybugs and scale and
Yeah.
some white fly. So,
Yeah, we had mealy bugs on a firebush leaf yesterday. I told them firebush is a native Florida plant that gets really big, has like red or reddish orange tubular flowers, and it is a butterfly magnet. Hummingbirds love it, grows like crazy, and flowers like crazy. And if you go out and start checking real closely, you're going to find every bug that lives in Florida probably on your firebush. And I don't think I've ever seen any serious insect pest infestations or diseases on a firebush. They're tough as nails. My favorite kind of plant.
yeah, the native plants tend to be pretty resistant to insects. But that's why they're native plants. They've been here long enough. They've acquired whatever it takes. Either they poison off the insects or they've outproduced the insects. The one I think that is really funny is oleander. You know,
Yeah.
because it's almost impossible to stay ahead of the oleander caterpillars. And I mean, if you plant a half a dozen oleander bushes, uh, they're going to be defoliated uh, 3, 4 times a year, and you have to go out every 3 or 4 days and check them and spray them if necessary. So um, BT works. If you're
Yeah.
not one that you want to use anything stronger, BT is good. Um, the
Spinning.
spinosad works pretty
Yeah.
good. So uh,
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work, though. And you can let the oleander caterpillars go. If you have a lot of them, they'll pretty much defoliate your oleander temporarily. The plants almost always grow back, but bare, twiggy looking plants are, that might not be the look you're shooting for in your landscape.
yeah, unfortunately, after about 3 or 4 years of that, they do start dying. So you if you decide that you like oleander, it becomes a lifetime commitment.
And the funny thing is, years ago, they planted oleander. I assume it was DOT that did it because it was along I-4 running through Orlando. And they planted literally a million of them. They put them, I don't know, 10 feet apart for miles up and down I-4. And they look great for a while.
Yeah.
And then I guarantee you the caterpillars found them and they started damaging individual ones. Individual plants over time would die. And now you're having kind of bare spots and, doesn't quite look right. Oleander maybe wasn't the best choice for that situation. They gave it a
No.
shot and it looked great for a bit, but I think they pulled them all out. I think they're
Yeah,
all
they're
gone.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a question for Teresa. Teresa, if you're still watching, if you want to go ahead and Google this real quick to figure out uh, caper bush. I'm not even sure if we can grow that here in Central Florida. If it's tropical or subtropical, you could definitely try it here. The problem with some of those plants is um, you have to look at where they're native to. Like there are tropical fruit trees that normally grow like at high elevations, 6,000, 10,000, and whatever feet high. Florida is maybe a foot high. So they're never going to do very well here. We're too low for them. So it really depends a lot on the environment. Um, Anne Marie has a question here about she had a tree with black scale. Uh, she thought she hit it pretty well, but must have missed that one out of the tree or out of the three. Is that from high humidity? How to get rid of it? I think I use neem and horticultural oil. What do you think? I have a comment or two on that. Any kind of scale insects can be out and about pretty much any time of year. For a while during the dead of winter, they're gone. I mean, they're dormant. The eggs have been laid and they're waiting for spring to hatch. But from spring all the way through winter-ish, they're out there and they could be a problem on your plants. You want to be very careful this time of year using neem oil or horticultural oil because even though that is the best control for scales, oil sprays could scorch the heck out of your plant. All depends. Some plants you could spray horticultural oil on, it's just fine. Other plants, it's going to look like you turned a flamethrower on it, and the leaves are going to look all dried out and scorched because the oil and the sun and the heat sunburnt them, basically. So, any suggestions on scales in the summer?
Well, about the only thing that really works in the summer is hort soap, and that's mediocre, but that does uh, keep them under control. I would recommend horticultural soap at this point until it cools down. And are you sure it's a black scale or is it sooty mold? If it's sooty mold, uh, it's because there's an insect on the leaf above where the black stuff is showing up. So
Hmm. Yeah. And the funny thing is with scales is there's a lot of beneficial insects out there that feed on them and prey on them. There's a lot of beneficial, very, very tiny parasitoid wasps that feed on scales. So frequently, if I look at, I don't have a leaf in here today, but if I look at a leaf and there's a bunch of scales on there, if you look at it under the microscope, sometimes those scales will have a little hole on their back. That means it's now a dead scale. That parasitoid wasp laid an egg in it, went through its life cycle. The scale perished, and the wasp cut a little hole to escape and fly away. So a lot of times, even if you look at a plant, you see scales, you see aphids, you see another small pest like that, you may have a lot of beneficial insects there feasting on them and keeping their numbers low enough where they're not really damaging your plants. So it really is a balancing act. If your plant is overwhelmed with scales and there's nothing eating them, you're probably going to have to treat with something. If your plant is overwhelmed with aphids, but you look and there's a whole bunch of ladybugs on there gobbling them up, you probably don't have to spray today. Maybe you have to spray next week. You're going to have to keep checking and see how the numbers are working out. You know, it's just a constant battle. One day the ladybugs are winning, next day the aphids are winning. You just have to keep on top of it and take action before your plants are badly damaged. A lot of times plants can handle a lot of insects living on them and feeding on them. Don't think that if you see one scale, you have to get the backpack sprayer out and spray your entire yard with something. You don't. Most plants are can tolerate a certain amount of insect feeding damage, but sometimes they can't. So that's kind of why we're all here, to learn from each other and ask questions and let you know which ones you have to control, which ones you probably don't have to control quite as much. But yeah, Anne-Marie says it has bumps. Yeah, scales look like little bumps on the leaves or the stems.
yeah,
They don't move. You don't see little legs. They don't run around. They don't fly around. They just kind of sit there and damage your plant.
before they build their little pyramid or over the top, the little bump, there is some minor motion, but once they attach themselves to the plant, they start sucking the juices and produce that little house, and they're not going anywhere. So
Yep. Now, after that, it gets confusing because if you have scales on a plant and you spray it and you check back a week later, they're still there. And you don't know if they're dead or alive. It's like, did my treatment work? Did it not work? I can't tell because I still physically see these little bumps there. One thing you could do is just take a pocket knife and go along and kind of plink them. I don't know if that's a technical term or not, plink, but you plink them off the stem or the leaf, and either they're kind of dry and crunchy, in which case they're dead, or they're not, in which case they were still alive. You may need to retreat. So, it like with something like aphids or beetles or caterpillars, it's pretty easy to tell if they're still alive or not a few days after you treat. Scales is a little bit more difficult.
some of the scales actually require an insecticide that's systemic because there isn't any really good external treatment for the scale. So depends on the plant and the particular scale. And that's a big family. I mean, we're talking,
Uh-huh.
uh, you know, there's 20 different scales for the citrus family that are only attacking citrus. And if you have cycads and you have cycad scale, it takes a systemic, one of the neonics. So, uh, and if you have a house plant with few scale, uh, normally horticultural soap works just great. So,
Yeah. And you can, if you're treating just a small plant or a house plant, you can put it on a Q-tip and wipe it off that way. So, most important thing is to go out there and scout. Be diligent, keep an eye on your plants, catch problems when it's just a little problem and it's easy to fix. If you wait until it's a really huge problem, it may not be fixable at that point, unfortunately.
did Teresa find anything on the capers?
No, no, she did not.
That's kind of an interesting thing. They grow on little stalks. The caper is a little thing on the very end of the stalk. So uh, go around and pick all those off. I need.
Yeah, Anne Marie says they don't move. So could be scales. Um, okay, we're going to have to look this one up, I guess.
It's one of
See.
those things. I was watching something on them gathering capers last week. So, uh, but they didn't have any information on planting them.
Yeah, this is just like I thought. Um, Capers come from the caper bush or Capera spinosa. And the actual little capers that you put in your food are the edible flower buds. You could use this seasoning, garnish, and it is Mediterranean. We have a tough time growing Mediterranean plants here because Florida's environment most of the year is about as opposite from Mediterranean as you can get. Mediterranean is California has Mediterranean environment for most of California. So very sunny, dry, hot summers without much rain. And then their rainy season is more in the winter when it's cooler. So that ain't Florida. What usually happens to these plants when you try to grow them in Florida, summer comes along, it's very wet, very humid, sunny and scorching hot in the morning, pours rain, plants sit there soaking wet all night long. I know the last week or so when I get up before the sun is up to put the dog out in the morning, it's soaking wet outside from the afternoon or evening rain the day before. So plants will usually struggle and have really, really bad problems with diseases. So my guess is it probably would not do very well here, although you can always try it. There is nothing wrong with experimenting, and I mean, don't spend a ton of money on one plant. I'm sure there's companies that you could order one from. Um, looks like a very attractive bush. I know my wife hates capers. I like capers. I'm going to have to go out and buy capers now.
Yeah.
You guys are killing me. And apparently, capers make a delicious pickle. I've never tried that before. One day I'm going to look for that at the grocery store. I think I don't even know that if the grocery store would have. I know they have jars of capers and they have jars of pickles, but I doubt if they have pickles with capers. I'm gonna have to try that. So thank you for inspiring me and giving me all these ideas about growing garlic now and eating capers and everything else. See, Every week I learn something being on here, and I get some new ideas to try for myself. So looks like it's about that time of day. Um, Emery says the larger capers are delicious too. I didn't know there were different sizes. I know that you could buy jars. I hate to imagine how much they cost, but you can get jars of capers at the store. So one last time, let me go ahead and show my email here. If anybody has any other questions, follow-up questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I will be back here again next week. Bernie, are you tentatively planning on being here?
I plan on being here.
Okay. Hopefully, we'll have Colby back too, and I'll line up a guest for next week. I need to contact our district's water specialist, Yi Lin. I know she enjoys being on here, and she is the expert when it comes to wells and septic systems. A lot of people here have wells, a lot of people here have septic. Bernie, do you have both out there where you live?
I do. I've had
Going
to
well?
replace the pump like 6 times, and had to have the septic system, the field replaced once. So
That's not cheap. And
no,
that's
it's
even more
not.
expensive now. So yeah, hopefully we'll have Yilin on here. I need to get a hold of her and invite her. So let me check one last time for any last minute comments here. Uh Bassem, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate everybody who watches us live and participates and then asks us questions afterwards. If you guys didn't show up, we probably wouldn't show up either, but we're more than happy to be here to answer your questions. And
The wonderful part about their questions is it gives us a good feel for what the interest is of the population. So we know that if you ask several questions about something and we're not really up to date on it, we know to get up to date. So it's good training for us to be here, and we really appreciate everybody that challenges us with a question. So it's good for both of us, actually.
yes, it is. Thank you so much, guys. So hopefully all of you will come back again next week because we'll all be here and we'll be hopefully bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and ready for your questions and ready to help figure them out. And one last time, need to send a big thank you and a big shout out to Teresa, who helps in the background. She's the one who's looking up the University of Florida fact sheets to share with you all in the chat. And she, like I like to say, I probably couldn't make it through a day of work here without her. So I'd just be lost. So until next week, guys, we will see you then. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye bye.